Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyaus Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantirame Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Now let us turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
We will sing the Grace Divine on the next to the last page of the book.
Grace falls alive.
Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Our topic today is improve, change, and pray. In the last few days, I've received several queries regarding the title of today's talk. And because the flyers get printed about a month before the event, I have to decide the subject long before I have to actually speak on it. What inspired me to choose this title was a golden rule for editors that I had heard about many years ago. So let me give a little background. When I joined the order, the Swamiji who was in charge of that monastery, his name was Swami Niramayananda. He was a disciple of Swami Akhandananda, and he was a literary person. He in fact, the first edition of the Bengali complete works was edited by him way back in the late 50s. And even before that, for almost 10 years, he was the editor of the Bengali journal called Udbodhan. And so when, as a relatively young monk, he was appointed the editor of that journal, he told many years later, when I had joined the monastery, that he approached another great Swami of our order, so name was Swami Madhavananda. He was among the well-known editors in the order's tradition. So when this young Swami went to seek his blessings for this responsibility of editing the journal, Swami Madhavananda said, remember this golden rule for editors. And the golden rule was, keep what you can, change if you must. And then the Swami used to say that this rule helped him a lot. And then later on, as it so happened, I was entrusted with the responsibility of an editor myself. So for almost 11 years, I edited the English journal Vedanta Kesari, published from Chennai in southern India. And so because this is something I had heard in the early days of my monastic life, I remembered this rule. Keep what you can, change if you must. And that was at the back of my mind when I thought of speaking on this, improve, change, and pray. Much has been said about the power of the pen and the power of the sword. And oftentimes the pen is said to be even more powerful than the sword. And those who have had some experience in editing know that being an editor is a very powerful position as well. Once you have the pen with the red ink in hand, and the ability that whoever has sent you articles for publication in a journal or if you're working on a book, then you pretty much can change what you want because you are the editor. And that's why, so that the editors should not overstep their responsibility, to just change something just because they have the power to do so, or keep something when it should not be kept. So the editor's responsibilities are very high. Now, why am I saying all this? Because not all of us are going to be seen as editors in our life. But in fact, we are editing all the time. In fact, every one of us is an editor. because the practice of editing is a very creative practice. Now let me explain. When we use the word creation, we often always associate it with God. Because we say God is the one who created this universe. And all creative activity in the world comes from God. There is a verse in the 15th chapter of the Gita when Krishna says, Tameva chadyam purusham prapadye yatah pravrittihi prasruta purani. Adyam purusham, that supreme being, yataha pravrittihi. Pravrittihi is creation, all creative activity, prasruta. So all creative activity we see anywhere in the world, at any time in history, comes from God. And that is why when scriptures say that God does everything, it's meant literally, it's not metaphorically. And yet, all of us, when we have to do things in our lives, we all feel, I am doing this, or I have to do this. So even when things that we do ourselves, we feel I'm doing it, it's because of the ego I. So it's God's activity gets filtered through my sense of I, and I somehow feel I am doing it. If you could hear your pen speak, I mean, nowadays very few people write with a pen, now that you have a keyboard and a smart devices around. But you know how a pen looks like, many of you especially. So now if the pen were to think, when you are using a pen and writing, and if your pen were to think, oh, I'm doing the writing, and if you could hear the pen's thoughts, that would appear ridiculous, because you know you are writing. But no, when you and I, when we say, I'm doing this, that's how God is thinking. Because we are just kind of pens, if you like, in God's hands. So the story of our life is being written by God, and we are the pen. And yet, we think, well, this is my duty, it's my responsibility, I have to do this. And so that's pretty ridiculous. We don't feel that ridiculousness now because we feel I'm the one who is doing everything. Now, creativity is of two kinds. There is a primary creativity and secondary creativity. There is primary creation and secondary creation. Let me explain. Those of you who have tried your hand at writing may be able to recognize that when you have a certain idea in your mind and you want to express it, and at the most common level we express an idea through any writing. Most of us send emails, text messages. Even text message, you have a certain idea. It could be as simple as saying, I'm on my way. But that's an idea, and a lot of people now, you have a fixed message, you just have to just tap it. So very few people actually even write on my way. But that's an idea being put into words. So writing, transforming your ideas into words, that's primary creativity. And especially, of course, if you are writing an essay or an article or a book, or fiction, non-fiction, then that's creativity. Now, there is secondary creativity, means the editing that you do of the writing that you write. And those are completely two different processes. And they happen through two different parts of the brain. So original writing and improving upon that writing are two different. So editing and writing are really two different things. What most of us tend to do, we mix up the two things. And that's why sometimes you will find you want to write something and you write it and then you pause and then you kind of scratch it, or you delete that word and you replace it by something else. So we are editing and writing at the same time. And if you have attended any writing workshops, what they will suggest is When you are writing, just write. And then after you have done that writing, maybe don't even look at it for a day. And then next day, you put on your editor's cap and then now improve upon it. That time you can then decide whether something is grammatically correct or not, or whether some word can be replaced by a better word, or what kind of references can be added, or what quotations can be added, and so on. So that's the secondary process, editing. So this is just one example about writing. But this kind of primary and secondary creativity occurs in every creative activity. To some extent, I mean, look at it this way. At the physical level, when children come into being, for parents are creating a baby. Now, that's the primary creativity. And the secondary creativity would be the training that you give your children, the good training, the good way upbringing you give them. Because then you want that, well, here is this now baby come into being, let me try to improve upon this creation. Let me try to make it as ideal as possible. But just as it can happen at the biological level, it can happen at the artistic level as well. So an artist, for instance, can is going to do some painting. So there will be this original creativity, some idea which is being expressed through a sculpture or a painting or through music. Music is a very creative activity as well. Now that's the primary thing, a certain idea being transformed into a work of art. But after that is done, then the artist might want to kind of add a few touches here, few touches there. A barber is a creator. So the primary creative would be like what kind of style you want, or what kind of, and then sometime towards the end, then the barber, you will be kind of giving the small touches. That will be like the editing of that's been done. I'm just mentioning to show that everything that we do in life, there is a primary creation and there is a secondary creation. Now, in daily life, which is what this topic is today is about, the primary creation has already occurred. There is nothing much to be done. The world already created. So we don't have to really create it. Somebody has already done it before us. Our own existence, we are already existing. So the primary creative is already done. So what we can try to do is this secondary, editing of the world that is around us, and editing of this being who I am. So the focus of the editing can be either outside or inside. And the outside focus will include one's family, one's workplace, one's neighborhood, one's community, one's country, and, well, the planet, if you want to kind of enlarge your scope of activity. And inside would mean one's own body and mind. Well, that's how we generally speak about the division we make between inside and outside. Now, social reformers and activists, their primary focus is on editing the outside. And spiritual seekers, their primary focus is on editing the inside. Now, although we are using the word inside and outside, these are not disconnected, independent entities. The two are connected, and we will see how they are connected. And we know they are connected as well. So, but in broadly speaking, the primary focus in spiritual life is editing the inside. And the primary focus in social work and social reform is editing the environment, editing the outside. Now, editing is an art, and this art includes several things. One of the first requirement to master the art of editing is knowledge of the ideal. For instance, about writing. If I want to edit a piece of writing, I must have some ideal about what is a good piece of writing. What would qualify as a good work of art or a good piece of whatever. So similarly, if I want to now improve society or community, social work, then I must have some knowledge of what is my ideal. What would an ideal community be like? What would be an ideal family like? Because only if I know what an ideal family is like, then I know what ideal should strive for. Or similarly, looking inside, what would be an ideal person? If I want to edit my inside and improve upon it, the primary creation is already done. Now, secondary thing is how can I edit what's inside here? And for that, I must know what is an ideal human being, what's an ideal society. The second requirement is a careful study of what needs editing. Because I know the ideal, now I must know, oh, here is this piece of, let's say, again, I again and again go back to writing because that's what I have done more of in my life than other things. So when an article comes from an editor, you must read what the author wants to say. Look at it from the author's point of view, and you have a certain ideal in mind. And then only the process of editing can start. So you must first know the ideal and study what needs editing. It's good to recognize also that we have more options for editing the inside than editing the outside. There are too many forces working in the external world, and our ability to edit the outside is limited. While we have a considerably greater power and options to edit the inside of us. And as I said before, the two are connected. The more I edit myself inside and I do it well, the greater the ability I have to edit outside and do it well. So, social reformers who don't make any effort to reform themselves will be terrible social reformers. So, any kind of a reform, if I want to improve something outside, I must first make sure that I'm improved inside. If I want to bring peace outside, within in a family or in a society or in a community, I must be a peaceful person myself. If I am disturbed and angry and I say, let me bring peace to you all, it just doesn't work that way. And that's how the inside and outside are connected. And we must recognize also that while, as I said in the beginning, while we have the ability to change, or at least the ability to try changing, not everything may need change. Years ago, this is again one of the incidents, the editor Swami of the Udbodhan Bengali journal, he told me, he said many years ago, they used to often receive letters from people and contributors, and he was the editor, so he used to receive the big correspondence. And this was like pre-computer days in India. It was like in the late 40s and early 50s. And so a lot of times the subscriptions for the journals, they used to send by the process, the money orders. So one of the writers who had contributed an essay for the journal, he had sent an article, and the article was fairly good. It needed some editing. And then this editor, Swami, told me that, well, he did some editing and the article was published. And after the article was published, the author wrote to the editor and said, thank you so much for publishing my article, and the changes you made were really very good, and it really improved the article. But I was a little distressed to see, not only did you change the contents of my article, my name also was got edited out. Again, and those were the days when the manuscripts used to be handwritten, and apparently this person's handwriting wasn't that good, and so it was just a misreading of the name. And so he said then, yeah. So the name was edited. That's what the kind of the story that he had told. So I mentioned this to show that one of the important things that we have to remember, not just in writing, but trying to, as we look around life around us and a life, what is happening inside us, the recognition that yes, with time, some things need changing, But not everything needs changing. When something has survived for a certain length of time, it has served a useful purpose. So, a change has to be a form of growth. It's like human life. When a child becomes a teenager, something has changed, but something has remained same as well. It's not like the child is dead and a new person is put in that place. Although sometimes it may feel that way, but no, it's a growth. It's a growth from a childhood to teenage years to youth and middle age. So in the same way, every kind of editing has to be a natural growth. So change has to be, that's why the rule for editors, which I read in the beginning, was change if you must, but keep what you can. Now, applying that to our editing of life, both inside and outside, would mean improve what you can, change if you must. That's how these first two letters of our title today come. So when we look around us and within us, we have to first recognize, before I even think of making any changes, before I even think of making any improvement, do I have any concept of what an ideal society is, or what an ideal human being is? And that is where the study of lives of these great ones becomes very helpful. Oftentimes, an ideal society in the Indian subcontinent, traditionally, they have often referred to an ideal society with the example of Ramarajya. And the way it's described was, in the time of Rama, the king, things were very ideal. Everything seemed to be very ideal. And sometimes that idealized version can get exaggerated to the point of something appearing unbelievable. And Sri Ramakrishna refers to it also. Sometimes people speak about Ramarajya, an ideal place would be everyone has plenty and nobody lacks anything. Oftentimes, sometimes you think of that as the golden age and so on. It's doubtful whether any time such a golden age existed. Even in Ramayana, there is description that when Rama was coronated king, thousands of poor people were fed and homeless people were fed. Now it seems like a wonderful thing, but it also showed, well, there were poor and homeless people there. So it wasn't like everything was in plenty, for everyone. Sri Ramakrishna refers to another one, story connected with Ramayana, and that was that after Rama became king, Sita once said to Rama that now that you are the king, make sure that everyone has plenty. No one lacks anything in this kingdom of ours. And Rama said, well, that would be an ideal thing to do, but it just doesn't work that way. If everyone has more than they need, then the kingdom won't function. And she said, no, this is what you must do. And then the story goes on to say, well, Rama said, okay, let's try it out. And then the rainy season came, the monsoons, which can be pretty heavy at times in parts of India, and some roofs started leaking. And then people like, oh, we'll need someone to come and fix the roof. But there were no roofers available. Well, everyone had plenty. No one needed to work anymore. And then, of course, we know how the whole social structure started crumbling. Now, this is not to justify that there will be people in need of something, but to recognize that in a social context, there are different needs, and then you need people to fulfill those needs. And in order to keep that balance of community life, there have to be people in need of something, and there will have to be someone to fulfill that need. In any case, all these stories that we hear about, some of them are just come in an oral tradition, is to recognize that things may not be ideal in an idealized version, but we must have some sense of what that ideal is. Similarly, the ideal human being. what is my idea of an ideal human being? And one way we are able to gauge what our idea of a human being, ideal human being is to know who our role models are. Which are the kind of people we look up to? That shows what is our sense of an ideal life, an ideal human being. Again, it's the Rama's personality again, which is often held up, not universally, but in many parts of India as an ideal human being. In fact, the phrase that gets used is Maryada Purushottama. Purushottama means the ideal, the best among the human beings. So, if we have this idea as spiritual seekers, many of us who have read the lives of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Swamiji, and other great saints and mystics and saviors and teachers of the world traditions, we will have some role models in our own lives. And then what we can do is to say, well, that's my sense of who an ideal human being is. And the next thing would be then to look at my life as it is now. And it's no surprise. I will find that, well, I as I am now, am far from that ideal human being. So there is some bridge that needs to be spanned. Once I know the ideal and once I know where I stand, then it becomes much easier that looking at my life, what are the things that I need to keep? But not everything in my life is bad. Not everything in my life is should be worth discarding. So I must see what are the good things here. Then I have to recognize what are my present weaknesses. What are those kind of areas in my life I need to work on? What is the kind of improvement I can do? The certain things are good, but they can be made better. So then I can make a list of these are the things in my life. I think they are not bad, they are good, but it will need some tinkering. It will need some improvement. And similarly, there are certain things we say, no, these things just improvement won't work. Sometimes you will see there are things which renovation works, and at some point when you have renovated something 20 times, and then after some time you want to renovate it again, and they say, no, this is now beyond fixing. You just need to get another one. So some of the things in our life would be like that. It's beyond fixing, beyond improvement. We say, no, this needs to be changed. So we have to recognize what parts of our life, our ways of thinking, our ways of relating to other people, our ways of doing our work, our ways of understanding life, all of these things are included. And we must say, can I bring about some improvement in it so that it will come closer to my ideal of a human being? Similarly, find out what things need to be changed. Now, there may be some things within us which need improvement and which need change, and maybe we have tried our best, and yet we find our effort falls short, that we are not able to do it. That is when we have to pray. Now, prayer sometimes almost, for many people, prayer is either pointless if they do not believe, but even if they believe, prayer seems like almost an afterthought, almost like a backup. If nothing works, maybe okay, then you can pray. Actually, I think that's unfortunate, because if anything, prayer is the most powerful practice. If done with real faith, nothing is more powerful in life than prayer. So sometimes our lack of faith, our lack of faith in the power of prayer itself is the greatest obstacle. Because there are things that can be achieved through prayer which, through experience, many people have found in their lives that they couldn't do through any other means. So prayer is an important, probably the most important part when we begin about editing our own life. But we are not living on a lonely island. We are living with people. Oftentimes the most immediate people around us are our own family. our circle of friends, and of course, your workplace, the colleagues you work with. And if you're more active in social life, then the different communities that one is a part of. And clearly, when we see what is outside, every one of us has our own ideas about, oh, no. And often we are most of us are judgmental. No, this doesn't look good. This is not nice. This is not how it used to be in the past, and so on. So we have our idea about what is right, what is good. So just as we looked upon what an ideal human being is, we have to ask ourselves, the changes that I want to make within me or outside me, are they just kind of ad hoc changes, just on the mood, that on a certain day I feel? Sometimes people do that. We like to rearrange our room oftentimes, those who like rearranging things. And it so much depends on the mood. On a certain day you feel, oh, this is a great thing to do, and you do it. And then maybe 2 days later you feel, no, that's not so good, and you change it to something else. It's fine. We don't have to be kind of tied down to only one way of doing things. Nevertheless, when we are thinking about larger questions of life, it's not enough to keep on changing our ideals on a day-to-day basis. So it's good to have some kind of a relatively stable idea of what is my notion. Because then it becomes easy. So even when I first think about, and oftentimes, every one of us has some ability to improve or change outside. Sometimes it could be depending how much influence you have within your own family or among your friends or at workplace. Oftentimes, many of us, when you're holding some position in your workplace, and there are people, maybe you're working with a team and you are the leader of the team. So you have some power then to make some improvements in how that team works, to make some changes that may be needed in the way your workflow is or how your team works and so on. So it's good to have a certain ideal and then say, okay, this is the kind of change I would like to make. This is the kind of improvement I would like to make. And then, of course, as I said, the prayer is one more reason prayer becomes important, is that while we may have our own ideal about what an ideal human being is and what an ideal society is, how do we know that my ideal is the ideal? Because all of us have our own ideals. And so prayer also helps in that no matter what ideal I have in my own heart, that if I have faith in God, if I'm able to pray sincerely, then I can just pray that whichever way you pray, let my ideal be as close to the ideal that's in God's mind. Because ultimately, it's like our plans. We have our own plans. God has a plan for us. Ultimately, it's God's plan that's going to work out. You like it or not, that's how it's going to be. And that shouldn't stop us from making our own plans. But our prayer can be, God, this is the plan I have for my life. I know you have a plan for my life. Let my plan be as close to your plan as possible. That's all that we can pray. Now, finally, a few thoughts. I spoke about all this improve, change, and pray from the perspective of an editor, seeing that although we are not called editors, we are kind of engaged in the practice of editing, consciously or unconsciously, our own lives and the society in which we move. Now, there are bad editors and there are good editors. In order to be a good editor, it's very important that we have a good knowledge of the ideal and an accurate study of who I am at present and who and how my environment is at present. So it's a very responsible work. So self-examination is very important in life. That's why it was said that an unexamined life is not worth living. And a corollary to that, an unlived life is not worth examining either. So conscious living is what it is, not just living mechanically. We don't want, sometimes people speak about a future when machines will take over, when robots will take over the whole thing. It might seem to be something that is out in the future, but in some sense, I think they have already taken over. And I'm not even speaking about all these smart devices. Actually, we have become robots ourselves. Everything that we do in our life without self-awareness is essentially what a robot would do. Because what a machine does is machine does everything, but there is no self-awareness. And how much of what I do in my life is done with full awareness. Otherwise, our actions are quite predictable actually, depending on the habits that we have formed, the habits of doing certain things, the habits of thinking, the way we react to people and things around us is very predictable. So we have certain notions about this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. So our biases, our prejudices, they are controlling us. And if we are being controlled, all of our reactions and movements in society are completely being controlled by these factors, then we have become machines ourselves. So machines have already taken over. The only way we can stop this is become self-aware. And becoming self-aware means trying as much as possible not to do anything mechanically in life. Even things that you do regularly, which we might feel like it doesn't need so much attention, I think should be done with awareness. In fact, if these daily actions that we do, if they are done with awareness, there is a greater chance that some of the major things we do in life, we will be able to do it with awareness. Simple thing like brushing your teeth. You might say, well, that's something we have been doing from the time we were young. It doesn't need too much self-awareness, but actually it does. If I'm able to brush my teeth with complete awareness, and some of these ideal styles of brushing, they might suggest that, and that's so true. Apart from having better teeth, it'll also make you feel good. If you can drink your cup of tea or coffee with total awareness, that tea or coffee will taste even better. Same thing, even when you say hello to your family, when you greet them, or when your child comes and you hug your child, do it with total awareness, and you will find that there is much greater expression of love, understanding, friendship when it is done with awareness. Simple act as saying a thank you. A thank you, well, they're just two words. And you can see, you can know when people say thank you, how many of those thank yous are just a mechanical, reflexive action? When people just say thank you and they're not even aware they have said thank you. And the person who has heard also is not even aware they have heard it. Again, it's very mechanical. But a thank you that is said with a heart filled with gratitude will sound different. A thank you that is said that way will touch the other person, the heart of the other person in a different way. Same way when you wish someone good morning. So every word that we speak, every action that we do, the more we do it with consciousness, the greater the power it will hold. And only then this editing can occur well. So all efforts at changing either myself or the people around me or the place around me or the environment around me, all effort to improve myself or the world around me, all of these things will become possible and effective only when I'm aware, only when I do it consciously, not mechanically. So this is not a bag of tricks. This is not magic. This is just that I have to do things with full consciousness. Prayer can be another thing that can become very mechanical. Some people pray regularly, but then at some point it becomes another chore to be completed. oh, I have to do my prayer, and just do it, and then get some satisfaction. I've said my prayer. But if I did the same prayer, it doesn't have to be 2 hours long. Even it just can be 2 minutes. But with those 2 minutes, if I can pray with my full heart, that will have a great transformative effect on our life. So that's the message. Improve, change, pray. If I can do this with full awareness, knowing the ideal, knowing where I stand, and doing it with love, compassion, and understanding, very soon we will be closer to where we want to be. And I think that's something that we all can think about. We make so much plans for our own future. I think one of the questions we can ask ourselves is, let's say 10 years. So now this is 2018, 2028. We can ask ourselves, what do I see myself doing 10 years from now? We all want to be around 10 years from now. What do I see? Where will I be? What kind of a person do I want to be 10 years from now? What kind of, how do I see? How do I see my life then? How do I see my relationships then? How do I see the environment in which I live? And once I have that, however hazy, it doesn't have to be a very clear picture. However hazy that picture is, then I have to look at my life now and say, if I continue to do what I'm doing now, if I continue to think the way I think, if I continue to speak the way I speak, if I continue to work the way I work, will it take me to that spot I want to be 10 years from now? And if we feel like, no, I'm not sure, then I say, well, what needs to change? Something needs to change. If my present life will not take me there 10 years from now, something needs to be changed. Something needs to be improved. And if you're not sure what needs to be changed, what needs to be improved, we can pray for guidance. Lot to think about, so I would encourage you to reflect on this, because spiritual life is more than simply doing your japa morning and evening. Spiritual life is more than simply attending these weekly satsangs. Spiritual life is a life that is lived from moment to moment. It's a life that is lived with awareness. It's a life that asks ourselves the sometimes uncomfortable questions, like what needs to change? What needs to improve? Because spiritual life is not about believing in this or believing in that. Not just acknowledging, oh, this is right or this is wrong. Nobody cares what you think, whether it's right or wrong. Spiritual life primarily is about transformation. Have I changed, and changed for the better? What I am now and what I was 5 years ago, do I feel I have become a better person? And if I continue to do what I'm doing now, do I feel I will become even better tomorrow, next month, next year? It's about this changing. It's about change, and changing for the better. And ultimately, of course, it's recognizing who we really are. So these are some of the thoughts that come to mind. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. Let's observe a moment of silence and prayer for a couple of minutes, and then we'll do the prayer. next Sunday for the satsang. Our subject will be Being Me. On Wednesday, we'll continue with the study of the Bhakti Sutras. And Tuesday and Saturday, our meditation will also continue as usual. Let's do the prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Aura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.